What's going on, YouTube guys? It's Chris over at Battle Beaver Customs, and I wanted to talk about a service that we offer. Actually, I'm going to sit and show you how to do it. I don't expect a lot of people to do this by themselves, but I have had some questions on if I can do this, am I using the correct replacement parts, and what really goes into it. So for you guys that are brave enough to do some soldering, this will be a great instructional video. For those of you looking to get it done, this will just hopefully reaffirm that you know we're doing it correctly. So what we're going to address today is repairing a Scuf controller. They have the paddles on the back. The switches they use tend to go out because of the type of switch. It's nothing against them. They just, it has a life expectancy to it, and it doesn't quite live up to what you'd think. This paddle, for example, works. It just has lost its click feedback. So you don't get that nice pronounced click when you're hitting it. And we want to show you how to repair that without having to go buy a whole new controller or meld your controller in and wait a month. So we're going to go over a quick disassembly. The Scuf controller, just take the rear off. This one's already been opened. So the warranty label is popped. You'll take your side caps off. We have tools to do all these in our website and our eBay store. Replacement parts will also be available in those channels as well, so you'll be able to buy these if you need them. We'll start by removing our 5 screws as normal. This controller feels pretty light, so I'm willing to bet it doesn't have rumbles. I'll make it go a little bit faster. You don't need to remove the trigger stops. They will stay attached to the back of the controller. I know there is a tutorial out there on how to remove your trigger stops. They're fine to leave in. Remember, your 2 silver screws are for your corners. They are longer because of this trigger stop design. It is a little bit thicker, so make sure you get those back in the right spot. This has the disc dill on there. You'll have to pop that off to get your faceplate to come off. So we'll just set this off to the side. We're going to watch some tools and parts kind of go in and out of the side. A couple things to look for. Now, I've seen this in a lot of controllers. I've seen them from Microsoft, seen them from everybody. This wire going across the top is for your trigger rumble motor. Occasionally, it has to weave in and out of these plastic dills in here. When people go to change D-pads, they tend to not get those right, and your thumbstick can hit them. So if you ever feel like a crunching noise, that's what that's coming from. So a lot of people, for some reason, you tell them to remove your trigger rumbles. They just want to cut the wire right here. If this is interfering at all, you can cut the wire in here, or just take your trigger cap off and take the wire off from the trigger rumble itself. Just eliminates the chance of that happening, which I'm going to wind up doing that for this customer. So we'll take off these thumbsticks, and now we get to the open of this controller, and you'll see we have our wiring in here. Remember guys, this is 30 gauge wire. It's a single stranded wire, very delicate here. So I want you to maybe at this point write down your color combination diagram, if you will. So your middle one is black. On this particular board they use, that's a shared ground. You have your green and your red. Not quite sure which one's which. One's your left, one's your right. So just mark down the colors. If one of those break, they're real easy to solder right back onto. But if you don't have them correct, you'll have to do one, go back and redo it. So just word of wisdom there. We're going to go in, remove these 4 screws here on the back. Alright, I'm just going to go ahead and get this back out of the way. Before we do, I'll show you how these buttons work for those wanting to know. These aren't traditional tack switches. They use a 3D printed plunger type dill that goes inside this hole. It's domed on the very tip, and that's what hits this very small switch that's on the board. So that does make them a little bit harder to replace. So there's that. Put these off to the side, make sure you don't lose either one of those. And then now we have our board. I'm just going to flip this whole thing over. I'm left-handed, so I'm going to want to work on my left side a little bit more. And we have our two switches. Okay, it's on this side of the board. Remember, watch out for those delicate switches. I would recommend if you have some helping hands, that's what they call these little goofy things, to go ahead and use them. And that will just keep everything from moving. It's kind of a small board. Just hold it in place so we're not trying to do a balancing act and let you free up both your hands. So we want to desolder these switches. I'm going to go ahead and do both of them, even though only one's going bad. This is my handy little switch dispenser, if you will. What happens if you buy stuff in bulk, you have to kind of keep it managed, otherwise it just floats around. So we'll get two of these switches. Alright, there's our replacement switches. And if you look at these, holding up next to each other, I mean, those are identical in shape. They come from basically the same manufacturer. So, put these right down here. And the next thing we want to do are desolder these. There's a few different ways to do this. Usually I would probably use some hot tweezers and go in that way. Hot tweezers, they just essentially are two soldering irons that come together in a tweezing action, which I can't get them out right now, but they're really nice. Not everybody has them. To do this the way you're going to do it at home, you're going to be using a soldering iron. I have both my irons warmed up right now. I'm going to use my bigger tipped one, for the reason being not everybody has access to a micro tip soldering iron, so this one has a little bit bigger tip on it. And what we're going to do, this technique I've learned a while back, I don't know if it's proper or not, but called float them off, or floating a switch. We'll just go in, get some solder on the tip, and you want to hit both legs on one side, kind of both legs on the other side. Since we have 4 points, the excess solder will stay warm. And since we're not worried about this switch, this one's coming off kind of ugly. And that way, it'll stay hot on one side as you work the other side and it comes off. So there's your switch. Dispose of that. Now I have a little bit of leftover. Use some copper soldering wick. Just go in there, use your solder tip, and clean these pads up till they're nice and flat. Because the very critical part of this is that it sits flat. Same thing on our other side. So we'll just go ahead and take that one off real quick. And guys, if you have any questions about how to do some of this stuff, we like to help. There are going to be some repairs or mods that we don't feel that anybody can do. This is probably borderline one of them. Granted, since it's not our controller, I don't mind kind of showing people how to do it. But do know that you're working on an expensive piece of hardware. I think if you brick this controller, their cheapest ones will cost you quite a bit. So assess your abilities before you just go in. So now we have both these off. Unlike LEDs, switches are not specific as far as having to go in a certain direction for your electricity flow. So it doesn't matter on that. So we have these two open spots. I'm going to switch to my smaller soldering iron just because it's a little bit more precise. When you do this at home, it really won't matter what you use. It's difficult to do stuff kind of stretched out on a camera. So this is going to be kind of my crutch. This is the soldering iron I use every day. It's a nice Weller. If you're looking for a good soldering iron, Weller WES D51. It's a digital soldering iron. It has a micro pencil tip on it, just very precise. So what we're going to do, take our small, I like to use straight tweezers, and take one of our switches, I like to get just a little bit of solder on the tip and hold that switch in place. Start with one corner. Make sure your switch is sitting nice and flush. It's easy to go to the opposite side. That'll anchor it down. And again, I'm doing this off technique. Traditionally, I don't put this much solder on the tip of my iron and move it around. I like to have the electronics in place, but bring the solder to the heat. Sometimes there it goes. Sometimes it doesn't want to grab onto those pads. Make sure that's nice and flush. Alright, so the reason I put that one in there, kind of show you guys that easy to mess up. I mean, you can solder onto those. I want to tell you that if you wanted to add more switches, if you could find a way to replicate that plunger, you can punch out these holes that are already perforated in there, and you can add another paddle on there. Their backs are already made to where if you were to just drill out 2 holes, you could add more paddles onto it. Again, I'm not a representative of their company by any means. Just kind of found a way to help fix some broken stuff for guys. Grab our screwdriver. Now when we test this, this should be perfect. Alright. And we'll go ahead and test it one more time. And there's that nice firm click. These switches we replaced, again, I don't know what they use. Factory, our switches are rated at 300,000 click life. An average tack switch is 100,000 click. So it should be 3 times the life. Don't quote me on that, because again, I don't know what they put in their controllers. So that's how to replace your paddle switches, guys. I'm going to continue to do this one. Going to throw some increased stick tension in here. Do a couple other little tweaks customers asked for. If you want anything repaired, fixed, built original, give us a shout. Check us out on Twitter. Hit us on Facebook. Get us on our YouTube or Instagram and the website. So we're all over the place, guys. Again, this is Chris of Battle Beaver Customs. Until next time, you have a good day.